We got plenty of room out here in South Florida for people to be dumping bodies, and they're taking advantage of it in canals, in the lake, in the bay.
333. For the police in South Florida, it is a confusing, frightening, and frustrating problem as the Colombian traffickers carry out their deadly feuds. In a country where poverty is widespread, where the per capita income is $1,100 a year, the chance to make a quick fortune in the drug trade is something many will kill for.
I received more than 15 calls telling me I was going to die because of my activities.
On the north coast of Colombia, in the hot and humid Sierra Nevada mountain range, marijuana grows as freely as corn in Nebraska. An estimated 50,000 tons of it make their way in bales to the United States every year. Usually the coca plants from which cocaine is made are grown in Peru and Bolivia. The paste derived from the plants is then sent to Colombia for processing and shipment to the United States. But the victories are clearly overshadowed by a realization the war itself is being lost. They are fighting a $7 billion illegal drug industry, and the shadowy Colombian criminals have more money, more manpower, better radios, faster cars, and bigger guns than the police.
(1982). Violence playing out on the streets of Miami reflected a turbulent chapter in what became known as the Miami Drug Wars, as rival trafficking networks competed for control of the rapidly expanding cocaine market. Fueled in large part by supply chains linked to organizations like the Medellin Cartel, the city saw a sharp rise in organized crime, money laundering, and high-profile shootings, some occurring in broad daylight. Law enforcement agencies struggled to keep pace with the scale and sophistication of these operations, leading to increased federal involvement and new policing strategies. While the violence drew national attention and shaped public perception of Miami at the time, it also marked a turning point that prompted significant changes in drug enforcement policy and urban crime response in the United States.
It is becoming an all too common sight in South Florida, authorities poring over the body of another victim of the Colombian drug war. It could be a child, a cocaine dealer, or an innocent relative. The machine gun-wielding Colombian assassins don't seem to care who gets in the way. Authorities say until there is a public outcry or a reduction of our demand for cocaine, marijuana, and quaaludes, the Colombian traffickers will continue to shoot it out in broad daylight.
In 25 years in law enforcement, I've never been exposed to a criminal group or groups that are as undisciplined and as violence-prone as the Colombian narcotics dealers.
It's hard to conceive that somebody who's a human being could commit some of the things that we've seen done here in Dade County.
The story of the drug war begins in the hills and jungles of Colombia, where marijuana and coca plants are grown. It then moves to the big cities, Bogota, Medellin, Barranquilla, and Santa Marta, where cocaine and bootleg quaalude tablets are processed for shipment to the United States. Also in the cities live the major drug traffickers, who behind barred windows and bodyguards decide where the drugs go, how to launder the billions of drug dollars, and who to kill in Miami, to show enemies and employees the boss will not tolerate treachery or mistakes.
We have found that feuds, which have started in Colombia and have resulted in murders in the streets of Dade County.
For the narcotics agents and homicide detectives in South Florida, Colombian traffickers, for the most part, are nameless, faceless shadows who defy traditional law enforcement techniques. Although the drug groups are divided by family, an employee of one group today may work for another tomorrow, depending on who has the best deal. Consequently, very few are caught.
They're here, they do the hit, they're gone.
If the criminals who jump bond return here to Colombia, why can't we get the Colombian police to extradite them to the United States? The answer is that a proposed extradition treaty has only been signed by one country, Colombia. So far, the U.S. won't sign it, despite the anger and the urgings of American law enforcers.
In Colombia, the government is trying to stop the narcotics trade, but the size of it is mind-boggling, and corruption is rampant. Authorities in the National Police say of the 500 traffickers they arrested in the last year in the North Coast marijuana fields, only 80 are still in jail, in a country where there is no bail in drug cases. They say payoffs are common. In the United States, authorities say they can't fight the traffickers alone. They need the help of citizens who, unfortunately, are reluctant to turn in the traffickers, either because of fear or a desire to cash in on a piece of all that drug money.
It's very hard to get caught. Nobody works together in the U.S. Everybody's separate. Drug Enforcement Administration works on one end, Customs on another, military on another. Nobody gives anybody information.
How did Miami become the focal point of a violent and highly profitable drug trade in the late 20th century? The Miami drug wars emerged from a convergence of expanding cocaine markets, strategic smuggling routes, and limited enforcement capacity, rapidly reshaping the city's economy and crime landscape. This expose examines the key forces, figures, and consequences behind that transformation.
In Bogota, Colombia, in a posh neighborhood on the north side of town, a decision was made to kill a man in Miami. Colombian authorities suspect the assassination was ordered by one of Bogota's biggest cocaine dealers, who lives in this house protected by armed bodyguards. To the unsuspecting, Veronica Vargas might look more like a kindly school teacher than an international narcotics dealer. But police say her appearance masks a deadly shrewdness and power that enables her to command a murder 1,500 miles away. The victim was Horacio Martinez, who was shot to death in a parking garage near the Miami airport as he climbed from his wheelchair to his Mercedes-Benz. Martinez was a Colombian drug dealer who apparently angered Veronica Vargas and paid with his life, dying with 12 machine gun bullets in his body. Such killings are happening with regularity now as wealthy Colombian drug dealers brazenly shoot it out on the streets of Miami, usually to avenge drug rip-offs, to save face, to steal, to silence informants, or to give notice that in the Colombian drug business, you will be punished brutally for your mistakes. The most well-known shootout occurred in July of 1979 at Miami's busy Dadeland Mall shopping center. At 2:30 in the afternoon, several Colombian assassins fired machine guns and other weapons from an armored van into a liquor store, killing narcotics dealer Herman Jimenez and his bodyguard. Also wounded were the store clerk and a stock boy as the assassins sprayed the crowded parking lot with bullets. No one was ever convicted, but police suspect this is the man who ordered the shootout. He is Miguel Sepulveda, known as Paco. Paco Sepulveda heads a cocaine group in Medellin, Colombia, that is aligned with Griselda Blanco. Although he is a fugitive from a New York drug charge, Sepulveda has never been arrested in the United States, despite frequent trips here and allegations he has committed several murders.
A master of disguise. We have approximately 10 photographs of Paco Sepulveda, and in each one of them, he appears completely different.
As police begin to study these shootouts, they are seeing a pattern. Many of the killings and killers are related. For example, police believe the Dadeland shootout was simply Paco Sepulveda's payback for another incident here on the Florida Turnpike.
The Real Miami Vice. Dive deep into the cutthroat world of powerboating that ruled 1980s Miami. Head to VÉHICULE to get your copy of the Véhicule print edition featuring the most legendary stories of 80s Miami. VÉHICULE Brain rot less, read more. VÉHICULE We have t-shirts too.
Frightened Colombian officials are starting to compare Medellin to the American Wild West and to Chicago during Prohibition. American authorities say the West and Chicago were never this bad.
Homicides are very frequent, so many that we can say daily there are 10 to 12 homicides. In a particular case yesterday, 6 people were killed in one incident, and this type of crime is very common.
The 6 victims were killed in a real estate office in a crowded, fashionable area of Medellin called El Poblado. At 10:30 in the morning, assassins burst through the door, firing machine guns at everyone in the office, including the receptionist. When the killing was done, the assassins sped away to escape arrest.
Authorities in Medellin say this killing is one more example of the displaced violence of the drug trade. They believe the assassins actually had a complaint with the company owner, but he wasn't here when they arrived, so they killed everybody else inside.
The killing shocked the entire country. The newspapers, political leaders, and church condemned the violence. But violence has been an integral part of recent Colombian history. From 1946 to 1966, 200,000 Colombians were killed in a political bloodbath called La Violencia. The killing was especially brutal as entire villages were wiped out in what began as fights between the nation's conservatives and liberals. Although the large-scale killing has ended and the political scene stabilized somewhat, many believe the psychological effects of La Violencia are influencing the drug assassins today.
You could argue that an entire generation, or perhaps even more, were traumatized. They were moved from one area to another area. They saw violence and death constantly. Vengeance became a way of life. Settling disputes outside the law became a way of life. The legal system collapsed and corruption was rampant. So if you grew up under those conditions, it would have a severe effect upon you later on in terms of how you were going to react, especially since the institutions have never recovered from that period yet.
The violence is fueled by the billions of dollars in the illegal drug trade. In a country where poverty is widespread, where the per capita income is $1,100 a year, the chance to make a quick fortune in the drug trade is something many will kill for, repeatedly.
Until very recently, the most common drug murder technique in Medellin involved the use of motorcycles. The driver would be up front, the assassin would be in back with a machine gun. The problem became so severe with hundreds of these assassinations that local authorities made it a crime to ride double on a motorcycle and to even wear a helmet which hides the face. Undaunted, the assassins have now come up with a new technique. They use jeeps.
The traffickers are not just shooting each other. Ana Cecilia Cartagena was a Medellin judge who worked hard to imprison drug dealers. For that, she was murdered, shot in the head as she drove up to this intersection after leaving a workshop sponsored by the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. 10 days before, another judge was killed. In several Colombian cities, judges have gone out on strike demanding government protection. Medellin's chief judge, Flora Palacio, was once transferred to Bogota because of threats on her life.
Because of this, we live in fear. This, in great part, is hindering the work of the judges, especially in Medellin.
Fear also surrounds the police and public servants. The former internal police chief and the civil aeronautics director were murdered. Several national police have been killed patrolling the nation's marijuana and coca fields. The bodyguard business is booming, and the former head of the Judicial Police Narcotics Unit is under threat.
I received more than 15 calls telling me I was going to die because of my activities. Of course, the government gave me protection.
So many family members of drug dealers have been kidnapped for ransom either by other dopers or political terrorists that many of the country's major drug families who normally don't see eye to eye have gotten together to fight the kidnappers whom they say are robbing them of their hard-earned profits. The families chipped in $8 million and named their organization MAS, M-A-S, which stands for Muerte al Secuestradores, or Death to the Kidnappers. MAS claims it is killing some kidnappers, turning others over to the surprise police. This supposed kidnapper was chained to the fence of a Medellin newspaper. MAS was formed after the kidnapping of Martha Nieves Ochoa, the daughter of dope dealer Fabio Ochoa. The organization has even gone so far as to buy expensive full-page newspaper ads explaining its cause and pointing fingers publicly at the kidnappers. This ad was signed by Carlos Later, identified by American authorities as a major drug smuggler wanted in the United States. Bemused law enforcers say it all seems to be a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
In Colombia, a lot of blood has also been spilled in feuds between the drug families. On the north coast, in the cities of Santa Marta and Barranquilla, there is a feud going on right now that would put the Hatfields and the McCoys to shame. It is the war between the Valdeblancas and the Cardenas families, a war that has left over 100 dead, some of them innocent bystanders.
I can't tell. I have to get it to the lab.
So this is why police in South Florida are worried. They are seeing more and more Colombian traffickers bring their incredible brand of violence here. We have had kidnappings and machine gun murders in broad daylight, and police worry the violence will spread if steps are not taken to stop it. To understand the Colombian point of view, you must first come to grips with the size of the Colombian drug problem. By all estimates, it is completely out of hand, despite stepped-up efforts by the Colombian police. Because of its climate, its proximity to the United States, and its rough terrain hiding an experienced criminal network, Colombia has become America's primary supplier of marijuana, cocaine, and phony Quaalude tablets. Business is booming, and Colombian officials point their fingers at the Americans.
La producción.
Production is made for demand. Without demand, there is no production. Statistics show that 90% of all the drugs in South America goes to the United States.
If the Americans didn't buy the drugs, and if they didn't consume them, we would not have this problem. We are simply suffering the consequences of an attitude caused by the American people.
On the north coast of Colombia, in the hot and humid Sierra Nevada mountain range, marijuana grows as freely as corn in Nebraska. An estimated 50,000 tons of it make their way in bales to the United States every year. Out in the hills, 500 Colombian National Police are burning up whatever marijuana they can find, destroying 3 times more last year than the year before. Some U.S. authorities say the Colombians are working harder than we are to stop the drug smuggling. Nevertheless, most of the marijuana still gets by, as the tens of thousands of traffickers clearly outnumber, outspend, and outmaneuver the police, most of whom are paid only a minimum wage.
The Colombian authorities, when asked, say they are seizing about 60% of the marijuana coming down from the hills. American authorities say the Colombians are seizing only 6%.
Colombian police say the mountains and rocks make marijuana eradication very difficult. The farmers are able to hide easily, baling up the harvested crop, loading it aboard mules and burros for a 2 to 3 week trek to the ocean on trails cut out of the underbrush. They also use trucks, often hiding the marijuana among other cargo. Sometimes they send the bales downriver in small fishing boats, or more likely in larger boats called bongos.
To show you just how dramatic and ingenious the smuggling methods are, this is the site of an arrest by the Colombian National Police last year. A 9-car train loaded with 40 tons of marijuana came down this track from the mountains and stopped right here. The bales of marijuana were thrown off the train. There were people waiting right here who picked them up and who carried the bales of marijuana to the top of the hill. The bales were then thrown down the hill to the beach, where boats were waiting. The small boats were loaded with the marijuana. They then motored out to the horizon where big freighters were waiting, bound for the United States. The entire operation took only half an hour.
As an aside, the National Police usually seize vehicles caught in the drug trade, but they had to let the train go. It was the Colombian National Railroad. The biggest problem for Colombian police, however, is not marijuana, it is cocaine. Most of the drug violence surrounds the cocaine business because that's where the big money is. Also, cocaine is easy to hide, with as many techniques as there are smugglers.
There was a scheme at one time to hide cocaine in pallets of horse manure that came with imported horses, because what customs official is going to go mucking around in the muck?
Usually the coca plants from which cocaine is made are grown in Peru and Bolivia. The paste derived from the plants is then sent to Colombia for processing and shipment to the United States. Worried Colombian authorities, however, say they are now seeing increased coca planting in Colombia's eastern plains area called the Llanos, as Colombian traffickers try to take over all phases of cocaine production. National police are now flying into the area to find the coca plants, which have to be pulled out by hand. If they find the laboratories or so-called kitchens where the coca is processed, they set them afire. Despite successes, the police still feel they are pushing a big rock uphill because the area covered by their operation represents only 1% of the potential coca growing area in the Llanos.
The difficulties in eradicating coca make the marijuana operation look like a picnic. The coca is grown in thick, hot jungles that are at least a 2-day trip by car from Bogota. The growing areas themselves are inaccessible except by helicopter, and even that avenue is being closed up now. The farmers used to grow the coca in acre-sized lots carved out of the jungle. Now they are growing it in much smaller lots where the police helicopters cannot land.
The drug problem is being fueled by the corruption of many Colombian officials. This man is an American narcotic smuggler who flew regularly to Colombia, buying his way out of jail twice by paying a senator and a policeman. He also says he paid colonels and generals.
You can make arrangements to land in an international airport like Barranquilla, or land in a military base out in the Guajira and have the military load your airplane for you. They use forklift trucks and conveyor belts and load your airplane for you and protect the field to be sure that no bandits come around.
I believe very much in the honesty of the officers directing the security organizations. At the same time, I think the majority of the agents are corrupted.
It is known that the police and customs are paid off to let drugs pass freely.
With all these problems on their hands, Colombian authorities are upset the United States is not doing more to help them. They even question the sincerity of the U.S. drug effort, as they see cutbacks being made in our law enforcement budgets. In the last 8 years, the Americans have given Colombia $30 million to fight the drug trade, but the Colombians say that is nothing. In comparison, Javier Alvarez, a fugitive Colombian drug money launderer, allegedly passed $30 million through an FBI undercover operation in just 4 months. One man. This year, the United States is proposing to give $2.7 million. But even an American diplomatic source says, compared to the size of the problem, it is like building a house without nails.
When we think about the U.S. help given to Mexico to fight the problem of marijuana, it's ridiculous. The physical help that Colombia counts on to fight the narcotics is reduced to this: 3 helicopters. Trying to fight narcotics with such equipment is impossible. In Mexico, there are about 75 planes and 30 helicopters.
The Colombian officials we talked to also wonder why U.S. judges let so many drug dealers and money launderers out on bond. So many times they skip bond. They come right back here to once again become Colombian drug problems.
A perfect example is Martha Livia Cardona, who after a 2.5-year Dade County police investigation was arrested for running a major cocaine ring in Florida. A Miami federal judge, however, released her on bond, and she fled back to Colombia, where law enforcers say Cardona is again rolling in the cocaine money. Alvarez also skipped bond. What also upsets the Colombians is the United States is pushing them to put the controversial weed killer paraquat on their marijuana plants. The Colombians say they fear environmental damage on the north coast.
The area is very windy, and most of the paraquat won't fall directly on the marijuana fields. It will go to the rivers and natural forests, creating an enormous amount of damage to the jungle instead of getting rid of the marijuana.
The Colombians want to know why the U.S. doesn't use paraquat to get rid of its marijuana fields. And they sometimes wonder if the U.S. isn't trying to get rid of the Colombian competition, especially given talk in the U.S. of legalizing marijuana, which grows in most of our states now.
Okay, out of the car. Let's see your hands. Come on, let's move.
For the South Florida police fighting the war against the Colombian narcotic traffickers and assassins, there are many successes. But the victories are clearly overshadowed by a realization the war itself is being lost. They are fighting a $7 billion illegal drug industry, and the shadowy Colombian criminals have more money, more manpower, better radios, faster cars, and bigger guns than the police.
We're losing the battle. I mean, we're just flat out losing.
They're getting better at it.
Dade County's losing, Miami's losing.
Right now, no question, hands down, they're definitely winning the war.
The private citizen is going to be the loser.
For the police, fighting the Colombian traffickers is almost a schizophrenic business, with sheer boredom and frustration on days-long surveillance details being shattered by heart-pounding fear at the time of an arrest.
We went up to just interview some people that we thought may be involved in the kidnapping, announced ourselves as police officers, and they opened up fire from within the house.
The Colombian assassins are partial to the Mach 10 machine gun, which, because of its inaccuracy, is especially dangerous to innocent bystanders. When assassins killed Oscar Piedrahita, they put more bullets in his garage door than they put in him.
I'd only seen 2 or 3 machine guns in the 10 years prior to coming down here. It seems like I see one a week in this town.
The traffickers have shown they will shoot anyone, even a 2-year-old boy. And the police know in the drug trade there are no rules against shooting a cop.
What I've got is a bulletproof vest that I purchased. It's something that you'd find probably in Vietnam.
If we were to get a couple of uniform units and we were to block the street so we can avoid any kind of traffic.
It is Friday night in Dade County. Tactical police, homicide detectives, and DEA agents are planning to crash a debutante party. The reason is the young girl's father is Ramon Ruiz, also known as Loco Martel, a Colombian fugitive wanted in connection with a machine gun shootout on the Florida Turnpike. The chase ended with police finding the body of a murder victim in one of the cars. In the cases involving Colombians, the primary reason for the low solve rate is police usually have no idea who the Colombians are. Invariably, they are here with phony ID, frequently posing as Puerto Ricans. Sometimes detectives can't even identify the victims, which hampers greatly the search for the killers.
A fairly typical thing, for instance, would be a Cadillac pulls off the side of the road, takes a large box out of its trunk and puts it on the side of the road and drives off. And inside the box, this person has been shot and tied up and placed in plastic bags and this type of thing. I think we're seeing an awful lot of that.
Police also have a hard time enticing witnesses and informants to work with them. The aura of terror spread by the traffickers tends to keep everyone quiet.
We get fewer witnesses out of Colombian organizations than we see in most cases that I've worked on.
The Colombian criminal has in Colombia some family members, real family members, that are close to him, and they're hostage to his good behavior. If he comes over on the side of law enforcement to make a deal, or for whatever reason, he can be assured that not only will they try to kill him, but they'll kill all his family members in Colombia.
For the police specializing in narcotics, there are similar frustrations. Their biggest complaint is the lack of manpower. The dope dealers love it.
Oh, the drug dealers are winning. You can't, it's not a war. They need 10 times the agents they have now to have a war. The drug dealers have they're the top. They got it. They got it made.
In times past, I think we had more people in 1972 than we got right now.
Agency-wide, that we could use and put to work very effectively another 600 to 700 agents.
When you're dealing with bad guys, they have no budgets, they have no laws, they have no rules, so right off the bat they're ahead of the game.
For the police, however, there are a lot of rules. And usually in drug cases, the questions in court deal less with the facts of the case, more with police conduct. A good defense lawyer knows it is best to keep the jury's mind off the issue at hand.
For them to make an arrest, they have to dot all their I's and cross their T's. They have to be very exact. The drug smuggler has it on their side. I mean, you can get busted for smuggling drugs and then get off it because they made a small mistake.
They may not be able to say very much in English, but they'll know how to say, I want an attorney, or I don't know.
Police say the biggest problem, however, is the Colombian traffickers have so much money they can easily make bond after being arrested. In the case of cocaine dealer Martha Libia Cardona, the prosecutor begged a federal judge not to lower her $5 million bond.
The government's just concerned that if she makes the bond that she's going to flee the country and she's not going to appear for trial.
The testimony that you heard is just basically a scare tactic to get the judge not to lower the bond.
The defense attorney won out. Cardona was freed on bond, lowered to $1 million. She and two sisters fled to Colombia and are now back in the cocaine business, thumbing their noses at the exasperated police.
The amount of money that these people generate, $1 million a day that any one group launders through banks in South Florida, makes it very easy for them to consider bail as a cost of doing business.
Police have also found with so much money floating around the drug trade, there have been breaches in their own security. It is not infrequent for officers and support personnel to be accused of being bought off.
Personally, the only people that I've ever paid off in South Florida was to find out about the customs airplane. You'd pay off the people that maintain the airplane, so they would tell you when the airplane was down for maintenance, and then you could run an airplane in. As far as the Drug Enforcement Administration goes, you can get certain documents out of their files if you pay the right people, but nothing in this world is sacred.
With all the problems, what keeps the individual officers going? Certainly it's not the money, the frustration, or the high divorce rate.
It's just a sense of responsibility, maybe a hatred. You get to hate the dope dealers. And when you do finally make a case, you make a seizure, everybody feels good about it.
In broad daylight on Dade County's crowded Palmetto Expressway, a suspected drug dealer has just been shot by machine gun-wielding assassins. The victim's car careened across the highway, causing several accidents.
This looks like one of those scenes you might see in Vietnam somewhere, you know.
The victim was Cuban. Police believe the assassins are Cubans working for a Bolivian drug dealer. Authorities say we can expect to see more of this now as other nationalities begin to chase after the billions of drug dollars fueling the brutal Colombian drug war. In other words, the violence is spreading.
I think what you're going to see in the next 5 years or more is you're going to see South Florida not only the base for drug distribution and cocaine distribution for the Colombians, you're going to see it for every South American country who has the capability of either manufacturing cocaine or the cocoa paste.
The Colombian drug war has brought machine gun shootouts to highways, to shopping centers, to crowded restaurants. A 2-year-old boy was murdered in a hail of machine gun bullets. 6 Colombians were killed in one house, most of them strangled. Police say it could happen to anyone.
You're going to walk in, you're going to be sitting there with your family eating, and some guy's going to come in and they're going to start machine gunning the place because they want to get to somebody that you're sitting next to.
It is no longer a situation where the rest of the country can shake its finger at South Florida. In New York, a Colombian family of 4 was murdered in a car. The violence is also being seen in drug ports of entry from New Orleans to Los Angeles.
In the back hills of Tennessee, North Carolina, and northern Georgia, people that have had run stills back there, their families did many years ago, they're being paid by Latins to grow marijuana back in those hills, run labs in those hills, and a lot of it is inaccessible. You can't get back there.
We know the problem, so where do we go from here? By all estimates, the current resources, methods, and laws are ineffective against the foreign assassins and traffickers.
You're dealing with crimes which have international repercussions and for which the men that work at a local police department in the United States are not trained to deal.
The top people, most of the people responsible, we never get.
Pretty hard to get caught in the U.S. It's very hard to get caught. Nobody works together in the U.S. Everybody's separate. Drug Enforcement Administration works on one end, Customs on another, military on another. Nobody gives anybody information.
Authorities believe the fight must include beefed-up efforts in Colombia, where the traffickers supply the United States with most of its marijuana, cocaine, and bootleg quaaludes.
We need to get the State Department active in letting every country know where drugs are coming from, that we're going to assess our relationship with them based on what they're doing to clean up those drugs.
The controversy is over what to do. The U.S. wants to supply Colombia the weed killer paraquat to be used on the marijuana fields. Colombia wants to know why we don't test it on the extensive U.S. marijuana crops first. Colombia, meantime, is asking for a lot more money to buy helicopters and other technology, and to supply alternate crops to the farmers growing marijuana and coca plants. But the United States is cutting back its aid money. Most American law enforcers say they are worried about corruption in Colombia and are waiting to see if this year's Colombian presidential election brings another leader committed to fight the drug problem.
The Colombians look upon the United States as the real problem, and historically, the United States has looked upon the Colombians as the real problem. Consequently, both countries end up sticking their head in the sand.
American authorities say whatever is done, the drugs have got to be stopped before they reach the U.S. shoreline.
1 kilo of cocaine at 90% purity coming into the country becomes thousands upon thousands of grams at 10% purity on the street being distributed by hundreds of violators.
As for marijuana, the Colombians say their police might be able to stop it. But as for cocaine, the South American supply countries have no real answers. There are just too many coca fields, too much money, and too many traffickers who, ironically, are using paraquat to kill the weeds between the coca plants.
The problem for those supporting coca eradication, beside the fact there is a huge demand for cocaine, is that coca leaves have been growing here in South America for thousands of years. They've become part of the culture. In fact, long before Christ, the Indians were chewing coca leaves to help them alleviate their feelings of hunger and pain and to give them strength. They even had a god of coca.
So answers must be found in the United States, where millions of Americans use the illicit drugs.
If the American public would stop putting it up their nose, the Colombians would stop shipping it to us. but the American public thinks it's neat.
We start in kindergarten talking about how we don't ever take any medication or anything else except that.
Some say the answer lies in educating the public, especially the children, to the dangers of drugs and their link to violence. But others say it will take too long. Their solution calls for tougher laws, stiffer jail sentences, denial of bail to foreign traffickers, an extradition treaty with Colombia, more involvement of the military, also more cooperative police efforts. An example of that is called Syntac 26, an effort by local police and DEA agents in Miami, New York, and Bogota to stop the violent traffickers. Their biggest catch so far is Rafael Leon Rodriguez, known as Amilcar. He is an alleged cocaine distributor for 5 Colombian families. Amilcar is charged with a double murder in Dade County, is suspected of several more, and is accused of trying to kill police on 2 occasions. The Syntac agencies are pooling resources and computer data in the hopes they will also find this man, Winston Salaverria, allegedly Amilcar's former partner, now his mortal enemy. Syntac is also hoping to untangle the drug organizations of Griselda Blanco and Paco Sepulveda, both fugitives suspected in murders. And the group is looking for Antonio Ramirez Puerta, a man nicknamed Pinello, whom police would like to talk to about several murders, including the killings at Dadeland Mall. Police believe all of these people are in and out of Miami regularly, sometimes hiding behind wigs and plastic surgery. Another law enforcement approach involves greater cooperation between American and Colombian authorities. An example is Operation Tiburon, which led to the seizure of 6.5 million pounds of marijuana by the Coast Guard and Colombian police. Others say the best approach is to attack the drug money. One such effort, called Operation Greenback, has led to the seizure of nearly $30 million. Only the tip of the iceberg, but a start against the $7 billion illegal drug industry.
You can take a large corporation, take the top executive away, the financial structure is still there. You take the financial structure away from a legitimate or legal organization, it crumbles. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is bring pressure to bear on the financial side of these narcotics organizations.
The problem has grown to the level where President Reagan has appointed a task force to solve South Florida's problems, which include narcotics. Local authorities are hopeful but cautious, however. They have been through a lot of task forces that didn't do anything.
People in Washington in the wintertime, they want to come to Miami because it's a nice weather and bring a crew down here and study the drug problem. And once the cold weather's over, it kind of fades away.
It's a national crisis and a national disgrace that we're not meeting this major problem. If there's one problem that could topple this country, it's a narcotics problem from within.
And you think the Reagan administration has not effectively addressed the problem, even with this announcement?
I believe they have not.
We have to start taking the war on drugs very seriously. If we don't, we're going to have something like a domestic Vietnam. We're either going to fight the war and win it, or we're just going to give up.
Police say the bottom line is this: their efforts to solve the drug violence problem will fail unless there is help from the average citizen. Police say they are amazed there has not been a widespread public outcry, and they wonder what it will take.
They're going to wait until some senator's daughter or some congressman's nephew gets kidnapped because they think that he had something to do with passing some law that is not beneficial to them, and then what are we going to do? Then everyone's going to say, wait a minute, we have a problem. We've been screaming that we've been having a problem now for, I don't know, for at least, I know this agency alone, for at least 2 years.
I'm just another citizen in this town just like everybody else. I put my pants on the same way everybody else does. And I can't walk on water, and I don't have a big S on my T-shirt. And unless the people out there that want this to stop are willing to take the steps to stop it, that is, stop buying cocaine, stop accepting cocaine money into your banks, into your real estate agencies, and into your car agencies, then I suggest that they put burglar alarms on the front door, buy Rottweilers for their backyard, send their children to private schools, and buy a flak vest, because it ain't going to get better. It's only going to get worse.